Okay, we'll start with this. I'm sure most of you have heard by now. WBO have now officially ordered Terence Crawford to defend his WBO welterweight title versus Sean Portier next. Parties have 30 days until August 20th to negotiate. Then a purse bid will be called with a 60-40 split in favor of Terence Crawford.
This news broke late yesterday.
And a lot of people reacted to it because in this era of boxing, unlike previous eras of boxing, we have a little bit more understanding of the infrastructure and what this means. What this really means for both parties, for both sides, both guys.
Both of them.
On either side of the aisle. You know, for Terence Crawford, yeah, they're putting him on the spot to defend his title against someone who's more formidable, more proven than, say, Igis Kavaliauskas was.
Not saying that Igis was a bad fighter.
I don't think he was a bad fighter.
He's good.
I think he was pretty solid, but in the eyes of some, Igis hadn't quite made a name for himself in the welterweight division, had not quite made a splash, and because of that, they didn't give Terence Crawford much credit for having beaten him. They want Terence to fight one of the who's who guys in the welterweight division, and we all know what the problem has been.
Politics.
Purse demands and sides of the street. What this developing situation with WBO will reveal is who really wants to fight and who doesn't. Terence Crawford is under direct orders to defend his title against his WBO mandatory challenger, who's now Sean Portier.
If you look at the WBO's ranked standings, it's not surprising.
It's really no surprise how we got here. I mean, Mike Coppinger described the news as shocking, but a trip to the WBO's ranked standings reveals that it's really no shock at all. The WBO's number one contender in the welterweight division is Virgil Ortiz. Virgil Ortiz, who post-fight, after the Mighty Mo Hooker fight, he did express an interest in facing Terence Crawford. But then, like now,
Listen.
I knew that fight wasn't going to happen. I knew that fight wasn't going to be next. I don't doubt that Virgil wants the fight. I doubt that his handlers want it for him. I don't think he's ready for Terence Crawford. And you know what? His handlers...
I don't think he's ready for him either.
Let's not kid ourselves here. A lot of people have got a lot of things to say about Terence Crawford and his quality of competition as of late. But when it's time to put up or shut up, you don't see that many guys trying to chase him down.
You don't?
No, it's not hard to see how we got here at all. If Virgil Ortiz is the WBO's number one contender, but Virgil Ortiz's handlers, you know, they're not actually trying to make that Crawford fight. They have instead made a fight with Igis Kavaliauskas, who Crawford has fought before. If that's what's set to go down, the next available contender, the next highest ranked contender, would be Sean Portier, who ranks in at number 2 in the WBO's current rank standings.
They've installed him as the mandatory.
And that puts Top Rank and Terence Crawford as the reigning WBO champion on the spot to make the fight and defend the title. But that also puts Sean Portier, people over there at the PBC, on the spot. Puts them on the spot as well. How bad do your fighters really want this fight? We're about to find out. Because if you guys don't like how the people at Top Rank price the fight, you have the opportunity to place a bid of your own.
If you want the fight.
Do you want the fight? How much is it worth to you? If you don't like how Top Rank prices the fight, if you don't like the kind of dollar amounts they're talking about, you have the opportunity to place a bid of your own for the fight to happen on your side of the street, on your side of things.
If you want the fight.
Now, if you don't want the fight, what you do is you reject whatever offer Top Rank's putting up in order to host it, and you don't place an offer of your own. That's if you don't want the fight. See, what this situation is going to reveal is whether or not Sean actually wants this opportunity, or has he just been talking a good one all this time? If you don't like the kind of money Top Rank's putting up for the fight and you think you deserve more, let your own people put up that money then.
Yeah, let them do it.
Because you're so worth it. You're too fucking good. Top Rank's putting up. I mean, that's the potential situation here. That's what could happen. I won't rush to judgment straight away, but the reason that this news has a lot of people's attention is because that's the kind of environment that this mandate creates. Sean, you've been running around telling every man, woman, and his dog that you want a Terrence Crawford fight. Now is your opportunity to get it.
No excuses.
I mean, this should come as welcome news to everybody. Welcome news to Terrence Crawford supporters and his detractors, the people who want to see him fight guys that are more solid than an Igis Kavaliauskas or an Amir Khan or a Kell Brock, the guys that have wanted him to fight, the PBC stable of welterweights. Well, this situation creates an environment, a landscape where that can actually happen.
No one should be against this fight.
No one who supports Terrence Crawford, no one who berates Terrence Crawford. No one, and I mean no one,
Nobody
should be against this fight getting made. Terrence Crawford ain't got nothing better to do, and neither does Sean. Nobody wants to see a rematch between Sean and Danny or Sean and Keith. That's pointless. This is a world title opportunity, a title shot for Sean Porter.
And I won't rush to judgment.
Because I don't have to. We'll find out what's what soon enough. These guys have got 30 days to reach a deal, and if they don't, this fight goes to a purse bid. Will the PBC people bid on the fight, or will they let this opportunity for Sean slip away because they don't really want the fight?
Well, you can't blame Terrence Crawford this time.
You won't have mental gymnastics and wordplay to turn to this time around. Danny Garcia was once ranked as the WBO's #1 contender, and no one made light of how Danny didn't take that shot, didn't take that opportunity. He chose to fight Ivan Redkach instead. And I don't think enough was made of that. In this situation, the fight has actually been ordered. It's actually been ordered. So they're not just putting Terrence on the spot. They're putting Sean on the spot as well. Do you want this fight or do you not want this fight?
You gonna fight for this thing or what?
Of the grab assing. We've been putting up with a lot, and I mean a lot, of fucking shit in the welterweight division the last couple of years, and I'm sick of it.
The WBO stepped in and made things easy.
You know, there were rumblings about a Crawford versus Zapata fight, rumblings about a Crawford versus Avanesian fight. Both of those fights pale in comparison to this one, but this one only comes off. They only get this fight over the line if both guys want it. So we're gonna find out who wants it and who don't.
It's time to put up or shut up, sweetheart.
There's some who feel that Paco Verso and the people over there at the WBO, who have always had a very good relationship with Top Rank and Bob Arum, the World Bob Arum Organization. It's people that think that maybe there's been some clandestine attempt here. Some strings were pulled by Top Rank in order to get Paco to order the fight. And I don't know that that's necessarily true because I reiterate, the #1 contender was Vergil Ortiz, but we all know that Vergil Ortiz isn't going to be fighting Terrence Crawford. He's not even available to do it. They've already made a fight with Igis Kavaliauskas. So perhaps it's not as cloak and dagger as some would have you believe, though I'll go as far as saying that even if it is, so fucking what? We want to fight, right? Well, that's what this order creates, an environment to make one. And you have to wonder if it's going to be Top Rank that places the winning bid, or will it be the PBC? Will it be some outsider, some outlier, like Matchroom or Triller, the way it was in the Lopez versus Cambosos Jr. situation?
Say Sean's not happy with the money.
Wordplay won't bail anybody out this time, because this time you'll get the opportunity to find out how the powers that be view this fight, how they price it in the open market, what kind of money they expect it to generate in spite of whatever purse demands the fighter might have. Yeah, maybe you think you're a $3 million fighter, or a $5 million fighter, a $10 million, $15 million, $20 million fighter. Maybe you think that, but you don't know until it's time.
You won't know for sure till it's time for someone to foot the bill.
The beauty of this situation is that it can help bring to light certain realities that many people like to skirt around. Is Terrence Crawford really avoiding the PBC welterweight stable of fighters, or is it the other way around, and these guys just keep finding ways out of a fight with him? This direct order for a fight to happen will expose who's walking away and who isn't.
That's worst case scenario.
In a worst case scenario where a deal isn't made within that 30-day deadline and it goes to a purse bid. Best case scenario, we actually get the fight. These guys are actually able to enter into an agreement amongst themselves without having to go to a purse bid. That's what the boxing fans really should be hoping for, though, I reiterate, even if that doesn't happen, the worst case scenario will still bring certain things to light that need to be brought to light. I think the fight happens. I think it can. I'm giving Sean Portier the benefit of the doubt because Sean Portier has been in there with almost everybody, and I view Sean as more willing to have the fight comparatively than, say, Keith Thurman, who talks a good one, but the man hasn't even rebounded off the loss to Manny yet, so I hardly think he'd walk straight into a Terrence Crawford fight, a Terrence Crawford situation. I think Sean wants the fight more than Thurman. I actually think Sean wants the fight more than Errol.
Because he doesn't have as many options as Errol.
If you look at Sean's track record, he's been in there with everybody except Terrence.
So here's to hoping that changes very soon.
And just in keeping with the theme of news by way of the WBO, Paco Veracel, the WBO president himself, said, "Please be advised that the WBO only recognizes Naoya Inoue as WBA bantamweight champion. WBO will never unify with regular, interim, nor in recess. We only acknowledge one world champion per division, waiting on Rigondeaux's request to be classified accordingly." This addresses a prevalent issue we've been seeing as of late involving a particular stable of fighters. Guillermo Rigondeaux is currently in possession of the lesser version of Naoya Inoue's title. And, I vaguely recall reading in a periodical that his fight with John Riel Casimiro, the reigning WBO bantamweight champion, they classified it as a unification match, and that's what it's not, and that's what this comment from Paco addresses. Secondary titles don't qualify. In the presence of a super champion, like Naoya Inoue, a regular or world champion
Is not a full champion.
you don't get to shortcut and finagle your way to full champion status by picking up secondary titles that the other alphabet organizations don't recognize. In this situation, the WBO would only view a fight with Naoya Inoue and John Riel Casimiro as a unification match because Naoya is the full WBA champion as far as they are concerned, not Guillermo Rigondeaux. Hypothetically speaking, let's say John Riel Casimiro's got a mandatory. And let's say he wants to have a fight with someone else, a world champion, a unification match. Well, in order to circumvent that mandatory, one, you would need that mandatory's cooperation, but two, it would have to be a bona fide unification match with a bona fide champion, not a secondary titleist like Rigondeaux. You need a full champion to be involved. That would be a Naoya Inoue. That would be the only way you could have that unification match without the risk of being stripped by, say, the WBO. And that's more or less what this comment addresses, that Rigo's not a full champion.
There shouldn't be any confusion about that.
Rigondeaux is not a full champion for holding a secondary title in all the ways that Gervonta Davis is not a full-fledged champion for holding two secondary titles at 135 and 140. We know who the full-fledged WBA champions at those weights are. At 140, it's Josh Taylor, and at 135, it's Teofimo Lopez. You don't get to shortcut and finagle your way to full champion status, least of all by picking up secondary titles instead of beating the man.
Be the man.
Gervonta Davis ain't no three-division champion. The only full version of a title he holds is still at 130 pounds. That's the only place he's ever been a full-fledged world champion. Everywhere else, he picked up baby belts and trinket titles, like the one Rigo's got at 118 pounds. I want to say that Rigondeaux versus Casimiro is a good little fight. It is intriguing, but what it's not is a unification match, because Rigo is not a full-fledged world champion. If he wants to be a full-fledged world champion, he's got to be in possession of a full-fledged world title.
Beat somebody for it.
I am glad that Paco Veracel, the president of the WBO, is taking this no-nonsense stance in order to clarify the situation, which really is no situation at all, because the seasoned boxing fans know who the champions are and who the champions aren't. For anyone who's trying to pull the wool over the boxing community's eyes, pull a fast one, try to bill Rigondeaux versus Casimiro as a unification match, no, I'm sorry, that's what it ain't. It's a good little fight, might be entertaining, but it ain't no unification match.
Needy Newier than there for it to be one of those.
And finally, more news by way of the WBO via Frank Warren. Joyce is now the WBO's mandatory challenger for the Joshua versus Usyk winner. Promoter Frank Warren announced on social media the change in Joyce's status Tuesday, and that the winner of Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk must eventually face Joyce. Emphasis on eventually. I haven't seen or heard anything about deadlines and purse bids. It's an eventuality, and it's an eventuality that I'm not against. I mean, why would I be? I'm a boxing fan, and I want to see boxing matches. Joe Joyce versus Anthony Joshua, rather, Joe Joyce versus the winner of Joshua versus Usyk. I'd go for that. Anthony Joshua is already set to satisfy one of his mandatories by way of the WBO in Usyk, because that's what that is. That's a mandated title defense, but it's taken so long to satisfy this mandatory that another one has rolled around. Though there is no deadline, there is no time frame, there's no mention of a purse bid.
I don't think he has to fight him straight away.
No, I mean, that would be 2 back-to-back mandatories for the same organization. I don't know that I've ever seen that happen in the past. I think, and I'm just guessing, that if Anthony Joshua wins the fight, he won't have to fight Joe Joyce straight away. It's an eventuality. But if Usyk wins the fight, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he has to face Joyce sooner rather than later. Though if Usyk wins the fight, you also have to consider that there could be an immediate rematch. We all know Eddie Hearn, he loves his rematch clauses, and I'm sure there's one associated with this fight. So it is an interesting situation, and it's a situation that brings some excitement back to the heavyweight division that has sorely needed excitement as of late, because most of the news has been somber. No one disputed the postponement of Wilder versus Fury's trilogy. Whoever was waiting for that.
I wasn't.
Smoking Joe fucking Joyce is going to be in action this weekend against seasoned veteran Carlos Takam, who's been in there with a lot of people, Anthony Joshua included. And on the heels of this news, a lot of emphasis is going to be placed, a lot of close attention is going to be paid to how Joe looks against somebody like Carlos, because Carlos is a lot more experienced than the guy Joe last fought, Daniel Dubois. Fortunately, we here in the States aren't going to get to see that as part of our ESPN Plus subscriptions. If you want to see that fight, you're going to have to order it on Fight TV. That's FITE TV. And I'm going to do that. It's a good little fight. Doesn't cost much. Given this news, that fight is of some significance as Joe Joyce is climbing up those ranks.
Moving up.
Changing levels.
I want to see how he looks.